Hello, and welcome to the 13th episode of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner Up Is, where we talk about actresses who may have come close to earning Oscar nominations but were ultimately overlooked or omitted, or for one reason or another just didn't have the votes to make it into the final lineup, and discuss why they may have deserved to get in and why they ultimately did not. Each episode has its own theme, presented as a double feature, and this week we are going to be covering two performances from the 30s that sadly did not earn Oscar nominations despite enduring, I would say, nearly a century later. And joining me today to help me break down both of them is someone who I'm very excited to have back on the show. You last heard him on the 1955 Best Actress episode, where we broke down Anna Magnani's win. We got to swoon over Katharine Hepburn in Summertime, and also sort of like be baffled by Jennifer Jones in Love is a Many Splendored Thing. It was a very up and down episode. No stinkers this week, though. Welcome back to the show from Next Best Picture and Awards Watch, Dan Bayer.
Hi, Kevin. Very excited to be back.
Very excited to have you back and talking about, I think, the earliest performances or films that we've ever talked about, you and I.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's very exciting. But before we get into all that, let's just break down why we landed on these two. So I presented to my patrons here at And the Runner Up is a list of 15 of the most notable performances from the first 12 years of eligibility at the Oscars that weren't nominated. And the choices were Jean Arthur and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Beulah.
Oh,
Yeah, you can
love
react
her.
as you wish as I go through this list. Beulah Bondi in Make Way for Tomorrow,
Oh, God.
Louise Brooks in Pandora's Box, Ruth Chatterton in Dodsworth, Joan Crawford in Dance Fools Dance, Marlene Dietrich in Shanghai Express, Kay Francis in Trouble in Paradise, Greta Garbo in Queen Christina, Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, Lillian Gish in The Wind, Brigitte Helm in Metropolis, Katharine Hepburn in Bringing Up Baby, Carol Lombard in 20th Century, Myrna Loy in The Thin Man, and Barbara Stanwyck in Babyface.
You do not know how many of those are on my top 20 list
Yeah.
of best performances that did not win an Oscar.
Yeah. Yeah, weren't even nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the top two vote getters were Judy Garland and Myrna Loy. So those are the two we'll be breaking down today. These were far and away the top two picks from the patrons. But I can also reveal that the third place here was Katharine Hepburn in Bringing Up Baby, who is also great. But yeah, so many votes for Judy and Myrna that the choices were loud and clear from the patrons. But before we break these two performances down and these two actresses, Dan, I just wanted to talk about your relationship with this era of film,
Oh,
the 30s,
gosh.
and why, films of this era are still resonate and have value today.
Oh, my God. I was recently for this, I had to remind myself of some of the other performances that were nominated in
Yeah.
these years. And because I had not watched it in so long, I rewatched Love Affair with Irene Dunne
Mm.
and Charles Boyer.
Hmm.
And there is something about that movie that to me typifies everything that old Hollywood was really great at. It just was so fantastic at taking beautiful people, throwing them together in a romance, just surrounded by gorgeous clothes and, very expensive looking production design and all these things, and just making you lose yourself in the fantasy of everything that you're seeing on the big screen. And I should say the silver screen, because back then there were still the silver nitrate prints that literally glowed when you watch it. And my God, how I wish I could see an actual nitrate print.
I know.
But from what everyone says, but I think that's the thing. It was this sparkling time at in Hollywood. That's how I always think of it, where just everything was brighter and bigger and more fantastic than real life.
Hmm.
This is the time of the Great Depression, and people wanted to go to the movies for escapism. And unlike today, they mostly didn't go for out and out fantasies. They wanted to see like more everyday fantasies. They wanted to see people fall in love and make a lot of money and enjoy life and get drunk and do all the things that they couldn't do.
Yeah.
And Hollywood made it look so good,
Hmm.
especially during this time period. And there are times when I just think that, like these types of movies are the only thing that Hollywood should make. Like, screw everything else. Just give me all the romantic fantasies, because you Hollywood knows how to do this and has from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yes. You said screw realism. I want magic.
Yes, god
You're
damn
so
it.
Blanche Dubois in that way.
Very. You have no idea.
Yes. um, no, I get that. I think what's interesting for me is I'm not someone who necessarily like grew up watching a lot of classic films of this era. I had certainly seen the big ones, including, of course, one we'll be talking about today. But sort of growing up, I watched a lot from the 50s, 60s, 70s with like my grandparents whenever I go over to their
Yeah.
house. But, again, other than those true classics, I didn't necessarily grow up with movies of this era, so I sort of found them later on. And at first, it took a little bit of adjusting because I think the cinematic language can be so different, compared to
Very
now.
much so, yeah.
But I do think there is just so much value in the films released in this decade, especially. And it's always just really fun to revisit this world and just see the craft on display, just like from a storytelling perspective, and to see directors kind of like working within the studio system and dealing with the production code, all the different value systems happening here, and just recognizing the artistry and the beauty of, in films of this era, and just the precision when you compare it even to like a lot of modern
Mm.
day filmmaking. There's just like, nothing is wasted,
I mean, yeah, these are when you think of like the Lubitsch touch
Yes,
and,
exactly.
and Billy Wilder and George
Mm,
Cukor and Weiler and all these other directors that were like, notable for how like sort of ruthless they were with turning around productions one
yeah.
after the other.
Yeah.
But they were, some of them were like journeymen, but others of them were kind of auteurs, as we use that term, right? They
Hmm.
really had an artistic stamp that they placed on these things, and they were able to do it, like you said, with this almost clockwork precision.
Right.
It's really amazing looking at these things. I've realized that like my taste in cinema can be pretty much be summed up by, if you have an on-screen credit for gowns by, that's my taste.
That's it. I love
We need
that.
to bring back the gowns by
Oh
credit.
my God.
Okay.
Yes.
Gowns by Edith Head. Gowns by
Counts by Edith
Adrian.
Head.
Give
Ugh,
me. Give
Adrian,
me.
yes, I know. Yeah, I miss that. Just from doing this show, we'd see it so much, obviously doing Best Actress.
Mhm.
So, but yes, I mean, like, even if sometimes some of the acting can be heightened and
Mhm.
mannered in a way that's distancing for some people, to me it just feels so alive in this era.
Oh, I mean, that's one of the things that I think has always spoken to me about this era of filmmaking, like the 30s and 40s.
Hmm.
I did sort of grow up in like 30s, 40s, and into 50s classic
Right.
movies, because
Hmm.
what Katharine Hepburn was one of my mom's favorite actresses.
Yeah.
So you would watch all those movies.
Hmm.
And then Hitchcock, of course, is the other big one that we would watch. But I didn't get to his films from this time until later. But there we also, my mother and I, another love that we both shared was theater. So
Right.
the more theatrical acting styles
The
really
better.
are right up my
Yeah. Sure.
alley.
Yeah. So I think before I even delve into my own thoughts on these two films and these actresses, I do think it is just important to mention that. And as we always do with A Woman Robbed, how, mention how some of these performances, even the other ones that I listed that didn't make the cut here, have really stood the test of time despite not getting Oscar nominations. And I think will definitely have a lasting legacy and have beyond some performances that actually were nominated.
Well, it's one of those things where like the Oscar nominations from the 30s and 40s are
Yeah,
so fascinating to me because it was, the studio system, and it's not
right.
just like who was the best performance, is who was each studio, who was
Pushing.
their favorite.
Yes. Yeah, the Oscars were also really just a different animal during this time, so I'm excited to explore all of that later on. But
Mhm.
unless you have anything else, generally, we can go into our first performance here.
Now let's go.
Okay, well, we're starting off just in chronological order with Myrna Loy in The Thin Man.
Pretty girl.
Yes, she's a very nice type.
You got types?
Only you, darling. Lanky brunettes with wicked jaws. Leo, compliments this evening.
Who is she?
Oh, darling, I was hoping I wouldn't have to answer that.
Come on.
Well, Dorothy is really my daughter. You see, it was spring in Venice, and I was so young I didn't know what I was doing. We're all like that on my father's side.
By the way, how is your father's side?
Oh, it's much better, thanks. And yours?
Say, how many drinks have you had?
This will make 6 martinis.
All right. Will you bring me 5 more martinis? Leo, line them right up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I've already introduced Myrna Loy on A Woman Robbed when Izzy and I talked about her performance in The Best Years of Our Lives, another robbery.
Oh,
Now, this
truly.
is this is her other big snub that people like to mention. I'm not going to repeat myself with a big long introduction, but just to briefly get into where Myrna Loy was at in her career at this time, she was definitely becoming an established presence in film, but mostly typecast in vixen roles and vampy stuff, and also Asian characters or characters of Asian descent.
Ah, yes, the exotic.
Yes, as Hollywood loves to call them, exotic roles. Yes, which is a whole other topic.
Oh
But
God.
basically, The Thin Man was a solid departure for her, and one that Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, was not enthused about. But the director, W.S. Van Dyke, insisted, after a rather interesting encounter at a party where he apparently pushed Myrna Loy in a pool, and she apparently reacted in a way that made him think that she would be the perfect fit for this character. So that's Hollywood history, I guess. But The Thin Man is a kind of complicated plot when you really drill into it, but it's an adaptation of a novel of the same name by Dashiell Hammett, and it's about the disappearance of a businessman and how his daughter Dorothy, played by Maureen O'Sullivan, contacts Nick Charles, William Powell, at a party. Nick is a retired private detective who's visiting New York for the season with his wealthy wife Nora, Myrna Loy. So Nick, with some help from Nora and also their adorable fox terrier Asta, go about trying to figure out what happened to the Thin Man, as he's referred to, especially after this man's secretary ends up murdered, and then another man is murdered who witnessed that first murder, and the police are puzzled, but Nick soon brings all the evidence together and reveals what he think happened. So yes, let's get into it here. Myrna Loy, Dan, when I first presented this to you, you were very excited about getting the chance to talk about Myrna Loy and the Thin Man. So yeah, tell me your overall thoughts on Myrna and her performance here.
The Thin Man is one of my favorite movies ever made. It
Wow.
is one of the greatest scripts ever written. Everyone in this thing is cast so perfectly to character. Like even all the little bit parts of all the the characters they meet while investigating this murder,
Yeah.
they're all great. I need to, and I wrote down her name. I have to shout out. Oh God, what is her Gertrude Short, who plays Marianne, who has one of the
Yeah.
greatest lines ever written
Hmm.
about I don't like criminals. And even if I did like criminals, I wouldn't like criminals who were stool pigeons. And if I did like criminals who were stool pigeons, I still wouldn't like you. Which is such a great line. And her delivery
The
is
delivery, I
so
know.
fantastic. But but anyway, Myrna Loy,
Hmm.
she after the Thin Man, she sort of got this nickname attached to her, which was the perfect wife.
Yep.
And I think that it's very easy for us to look back at it now and say like, oh my God, how condescending and awful of a nickname. But like you watch the Thin Man and you're like, oh my God, she is the perfect wife.
Yeah.
Like she and it's not just that she, unblinkingly supports her man throughout everything and is always there whenever he needs her, which she is, but it's that she is in every way his equal. She matches him beat for beat. There is nothing he can throw at her that she can't throw right back to him. She is just as smart, just as witty, just as calm, cool, and collected as he is. And sometimes even more so. And he acknowledges that. And
Yeah.
I love their relationship so much, Nick and Nora Charles. They are
Mhm.
total couple goals.
The ultimate, yes.
Really, they are. And they're always having a good time everywhere. I mean, yes, they're always sloshed, but so you can get a new liver if you that's fine.
Yes.
You
You
like
only live once. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And they take that to the
Yeah.
fullest. I they're I love her as a performer because that she is so good at always matching her co-star's energy. She locks into what they're doing and reflects that back to make it look like they were always meant to be paired together. She is one of, I think, very few stars from this era who are actually that level of chameleonic, where it's not just about they're able to almost warp their persona to match their co-stars, and yet
Mhm.
they still come across as themselves.
Yeah.
It's a really, really rare thing, and it's very difficult, I think, to do, but she makes it look so easy. And that's one of the things about this performance, about this movie as a whole, really. Like everything is just so easy breezy.
Mhm.
And it looks like no one is trying hard at all. Even though it like to make something this slick and elegant and witty and smooth, that's incredibly difficult.
Right. Yeah.
But they make it look easy, and I every time I watch this movie I'm just awed by how smooth everything runs. It's not quite screwball comedy. We hadn't quite gotten there yet, but it has that kind of energy in the dialogue. It has a kind of snappiness to it that makes me think of screwball comedies. And there are moments like when Nunheim first barges into their apartment and he pulls out the gun and Nick goes to like smack Snore and grabs the pillow to
Yeah.
throw at the guy. Like
Mhm.
it's some real slapstick. Like there's some pratfalls
Literally.
in this
Yeah.
movie,
Yep.
okay? Like
Her
it's
entrance is a
great.
pratfall.
One of the greatest character entrances
Truly.
of all time, getting pulled by Asta,
Mhm.
who a star, an
Yes.
absolute star. I
Mhm.
love that the two performances we're talking about today had great canine co-leads.
Hey, my
I'm all
patrons have
about
come
it.
through once again with a perfect double feature. Both, of course, MGM as well. So yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
But again, like one of the things that I love about her performance is that she is able to let the her co-stars steal scenes from her,
Mhm.
including Asta,
Yeah.
and you can tell that she's letting them.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there is something
Mhm.
about her attitude in every moment that says, yeah, this movie isn't really about me, but I'm still the one in charge.
Mhm.
And that's a very Nora Charles kind of aura that she's
Yeah.
bringing to it, but it it affects everything around her. I feel like the movie feels like it's orbiting around her in a way that like I really miss her when she's not in the movie, which
Yep.
unfortunately is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Every
I
time
know.
I watch this movie, I'm more and more surprised by how little Nick and Nora are actually in it together.
Right.
There is a whole long section in the second act where she's just gone from the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, I know
Come back. Yeah.
it's a great joke. The Grant's tomb thing, both
Mm-hmm.
sides of that joke are
Yeah.
fantastic, but I do miss her a lot when she's not on screen,
Yep.
and I think that, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I do think that is one of the reasons why she missed a
100%.
nomination
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everything that I love in a performance that, like, it make you miss them when they're not on screen. They have fantastic rapport with all of their co-stars. They have really easy chemistry, and they make things that are very difficult look extremely easy. And also iconic line readings and reaction shots, like out her ass. Like every time. I the I'm gonna do this since we can see each other, but the recording, people won't be able to tell. But when she walks in on Nick and Dorothy, when he's like consoling her, and he's hugging her, and he gives her this like aha look, and she like
Right.
scrunches up her face at him like,
I love that. Yep.
it's just so. But what's great about it is that that Nora is having fun. She doesn't
Right.
mean anything by it. And that's one of this perfect wife thing. Like, she is so comfortable in her position
Mm-hmm.
as Mrs. Nick Charles that she'll let him have it, and
Yeah.
she'll just sass him about it later.
Yeah. She is so
I
confident in herself, which makes it
She
so
is.
fun to watch because you want to
Yeah,
be hanging out with her, you know?
exactly. Like, they did not have this turn back that, I'm sure, but like, I want her to be my fag hag. Like, I
Well, we'll
just
get to that
want
with The
to.
Wizard of Oz.
Oh, girl.
I mean,
But no, like, she would be a riot over
a
brunch, like
riot.
over
Yes. Oh
mimosas.
my God.
Like, come on.
She'd be the life of the party, let's be
She would.
honest, which she is in the film. So,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, love all of that. You said a lot, but I agree so much with all of that. I think this is, first of all, one of those films where when I first saw it, I had heard a lot about it. Don't remember when I first saw it, but it had a big reputation, murder mystery, like what, 5 sequels, um, cute dog, and I don't think I was fully prepared for Myrna Loy as like this clutch secret weapon here that kind of brings it all together.
Yeah.
I was just thinking on this rewatch how the mystery of it all can be a little convoluted at times. Like maybe some of the performances, some of the characters are a little samey, and certain characters can blend together a little bit. The end revelation, I think, is fun, but maybe not like the big pop that you might be hoping for.
Yeah.
Either way, I truly think that if you don't have Myrna Loy as Nora, this isn't anywhere near as loved as it is, which is not a slight on the movie at all. It's just
Mm.
she is the glue. She is the special X factor here that makes this so special. And what is interesting about that is she's so funny and she's so in the pocket, but it's not like the kind of over the top scene stealing performance you might be
Yeah.
expecting. Like when you say something like that, like this isn't like a Marie Dressler in like Dinner at 8 type situation where she's just like having a ball, like so broadly comedic in a very obvious
Yes.
way. Myrna Loy could have been very wacky and broad in her
Yeah.
choices here, considering what's on the page and what's asked of her. But
Yeah.
she plays it so smooth and kind of subtle, even within some of those
Hmm.
one-liners she gets, like what she does with her face
Yeah.
and the scrunching it up, like you mentioned, giving Nick these like knowing looks. It's so funny and I think very ahead of its time. Thank you for listening to this preview of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerupis and become a patron. Only $3 a month will get you access to bonus episodes and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.